Welcome to Pick Up and Deliver, the podcast where I pick up my audio recorder when I head out for a walk and deliver an episode to you while I stroll around. I'm Brendan Riley. Well, good morning, listeners. It is a noisy Tuesday morning here in suburban Chicago. I'm out for a walk and it's cloudy. It looks like it's going to rain later today, although the ground is a little wet, so it did rain already. This might be the residual clouds heading out, or perhaps they're hanging around to give us more rain later. Either way, it is September 1st, which means it's my favorite episode of the month, the Top of the Stack. Top of the Stack is a episode where I talk about my gameplays from the last month, kind of hit the highlights, give you a sense of what it's been like to play games with me over the last 30 days or so. And then I set out my plans for the next month. I also like to report on how I did on a variety of different metrics that I use to keep track of my gameplay, because I'm a nerd. Just in case you were confused, this person who has a solo board game podcast is a bit of a nerd. Not a bad thing, I would say. So, let's just jump right into it, right? So, final monthly stats for August 2020. I had 54 plays of 38 different games. That's a little down over last month, but right in the average area. I would say if I'm averaging between 50 and 70 plays a month, I'm feeling pretty good about it, which comes out to roughly 2 a day. That feels crazy. Honestly, if you'd asked me 10 years ago, do you think you'll be playing 2 board games a day? I would have said, that sounds fun, but no. Turns out I do. It's great. 54 plays of 38 games. Keep in mind, some of those are asynchronous plays. I count an asynchronous play when I finish it. So if I start a game in July and finish it in August, it counts as an August play. I have a total of 545 plays of 185 different games this year so far. I played 3 games from my own development group, Rattlebox Games, and those were all playtests. My Shelf of Opportunity. It sounds like I'm not doing great because I started the year with 47 on the Shelf of Opportunity, and this month I started the month at 38 and I went up to 39. But when I get to the movement on that Shelf of Opportunity, I think you're going to be proud of me. So I did go up by 1, but I don't feel bad about that. And then collection size reduced. One of my goals is to reduce the number of games in my collection. I started this year with 369 in the collection. This month I went from 378 to 378. So the collection size did not change. Although you'll see there's quite a bit of movement in the collection. There you go. The most played game this month was Sherlock Holmes, The Baker Street Irregulars, which is the newest of the Sherlock Holmes box sets. I'm worried that we're gorging ourselves a little bit. Before you know it, we'll be out of them, and we'll be back to waiting who knows how long for the next box set, if one ever comes out. But, if you can't play a game when you bought it because you enjoy it, what's the point? And my most played game online was Codenames, both of those 4 plays. So, Top of the Stack. This segment name comes from the much beloved podcast of Nonsensical Gamers, which is going on 3 years since they had an episode last. I miss them. There's a game coming out called Bees that was designed by one of the hosts of the show. Looking forward to playing that at some point if I have the opportunity. So each month I choose 3 games that I'm going to try to play that month. If you imagine a sort of metaphorical stack of games waiting to be played, these are the games that I've moved to the top of that stack. Some months I do well, some months I don't do well, but I track how well did I do on getting those 3 games played each month. Now, the dirty secret of this, of course, is that I actually pick 4 games for that list, but it only counts as 3. Like, I get an extra credit game. I do this for a couple of reasons. 1, it gives me a little flexibility. 2, it allows me to catch up a little if I get behind. Then a month where I can make all 4, I gain a little bit on a month where I say only played 2. Yeah, I don't know. It's silly that I pick 4 and say there's only 3, but that's how I do it. So last month I had 4 games in my list. I had the new game, Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective, The Baker Street Irregulars, which I just mentioned. I did play. Pretty fun. I'm going to do an episode. I don't know if I'll have to check to see if I did it in the top of the stack. I was going to do a top of the stack episode, or shooting from the hip episode next time with 3 games I played recently. I don't remember if I did that one. The next game on my list was my Revisit. This is a newer feature, or a newer slot in the list that I've added in the last few months. It used to be that the top of the stack was meant to be games I've never played before. But I was getting to the point where my shelf of opportunity is less and less exciting because it's all the exciting games I've kind of played. There's plenty more that I'm excited about playing, but it's harder and harder to pick 4 every month and really try hard to get those played. And I do have a segment of games in my collection that aren't getting played, which are games I played once or twice and then kind of set them aside. I didn't dislike them enough to get rid of them, but I also haven't liked them enough to get back to the table. And since one of my goals is to reduce the collection size, one way to do that is to revisit those games to see, why haven't we been playing this? Does it deserve its lack of play? And so, getting rid of it. It's funny, I just watched a video the other day from Alex at Board Game Co. And he said that one of his rules is that don't give games a second chance. He said your rarest commodity is your time. And so if you played a game and you didn't enjoy it, or you have an opportunity to play a game and you'd rather play a game you really like, don't feel like you have to give a game another chance before you get rid of it. Just get rid of it. So it's interesting. The Revisit stands directly in opposition to that philosophy. But there it is anyway. So the Revisit. Then I have Audience Choice. For those of you who haven't gotten to do this before or have forgotten about it, I keep a geek list over on Board Game Geek called the Shelf of Opportunity. This is a list of all the games I own that I haven't played. Because it's a geek list, you are able to give thumbs to games that you're interested in me playing. Or, I don't know, games you want to punish me by making me play. And the idea is that as I add games to the Shelf of Opportunity, listeners can go in and add thumbs or remove thumbs if they've added them previously to those games. And then each month I will pick one of the top ranked games from the Audience Choice list to put in this slot. So this month it was Jaws. And then my reattempt is a game that I've previously had on my top of the stack, and I've failed to play. And so I'm trying again to get it played, and that's Acquire. I'm proud to say I got all 4 of these played this month. What, Brendan? What? Are you crazy? That's amazing. Particularly because as of August 29th, I had only played Sherlock Holmes. That means I played 3 of the 4 games in the last 3 days. And the way that I did that basically is I told my wife and my daughter, hey, I really want to get these 3 games played. Can we get them played? And they said, sure. It was great. I will talk about those games. Sea of Clouds I can talk about now because that's a revisit, so I wouldn't do a shooting from the hip on that. Sea of Clouds is a set collection game from Yellow. It's got lovely art. It is very light. The idea is you are pirates. You are collecting loot from various pirate encounters. It's got a neat sort of push your luck element in that there's a stack of 3. There's 3 stacks of loot. You pick one to examine, or you have to you look at the first one, decide if you want it or not. If you decide you don't want it, then you draw a card and add it to the loot deck, or add it to that stack without knowing what it is. Then you go on to the second pile and decide if you want that pile or not. If you don't, you add a card from the stack, and then you go to the third pile. Once a stack has 3 cards in it, then you just add money from the bank each round until someone chooses to take that. Then the stack starts over with 1 card. And like most set collection games, there's a bunch of different ways you can score points. And so as you're going along, you're reading these various different ways to score points and doing your best to win by scoring the most points. That's Sea of Clouds. Like I said, lovely art. Kind of boring gameplay. The last time we played it was 3 years ago. We played it because we played it once. We thought it was fine, but nothing special, and we put it back on the shelf. Now we played it again. We thought it was fine, nothing special. When I asked, should I get rid of it, my wife and my daughter both kind of went, well, it was fine. And I said, let me put it this way. Can you imagine yourself in the next 6 months saying, why don't we play that Sea of Clouds game? And they said, no. All right. I said, okay, it's gone. So that's on the sell pile. Sea of Clouds. But I did also manage to play Jaws, Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective, The Baker Street Irregulars, and Acquire. So it was a good month. 4 of my 3 possible plays puts me up to 19 out of 24 possible plays this month. If I were to continue with my aggressive 4 out of 3 for the rest of the year, I would end up only 1 behind 100%, if that makes any sense. I know it doesn't actually make much sense, but hopefully you can understand it anyway. So that's my top of the stack report for August. On to first plays. I had 8 first plays this month, 8 games that I played for the first time. Some of these were from my collection. Many of them were not. Among them are Abandon All Artichokes, Ghost, SOS Titanic, Fog of Love, Legendary Inventors, Undo, Curse from the Past, Acquire, and Jaws. I believe that I've talked about most of these games in Shooting from the Hip episodes, so you've heard about them already, so I won't spend much time on those today. If I had to pick one of these that was my favorite, it would be between SOS Titanic and Jaws, both of which were great. I also really liked Acquire. So those are my top 3 if I just had to shoot off the cuff there. Hopefully that garbage truck I just walked by didn't completely ruin this whole section. So then we have expansion plays. I have 2 expansion plays this month. The Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective that I mentioned before. I see that as both a new game and an expansion. It's this sort of weird middle ground where it's a standalone game, but it's an expansion. So I played that. I also played Exit Theft on the Mississippi, which was a bit of a mixed bag for me. There were some puzzles in it that were really clever and some that were really annoying. Usually Exit has at least one puzzle that's kind of annoying, and usually at least one that's pretty clever. So I guess from that perspective, it's on par with the other Exit games. I dusted off 2 games this month. Out of the Dust is a rating for a game where you haven't played it in over a year. And the 2 games were Bonanza and Sea of Clouds. I already talked about Sea of Clouds a little bit. Bonanza is, of course, the Uwe Rosenberg classic card game in which you are harvesting beans. And it's got the neat trick of not allowing you to rearrange your hand of cards, which is such a weird thing to experience that I love it. I've made made very little progress on the Family 20x5 challenge. Right now, it's looking less like we're going to get that done this year. We've only got 40 of our 60 plays done, which means that I have 60 plays to do in 5 months. And those are the games that we're less excited about playing, obviously, because we haven't played them yet. So I'm wondering if the Family 40x5 challenge is doomed, or if with the rise of school and a kind of new schedule, perhaps I can invigorate the family into getting those done. I'm making progress on my 52 game challenge as well. I've done 36 of those. At some point I will do an update on that, on the specifics of which ones I have completed and which ones I have left to do. Of course, you can find all of these linked from the show page over on rattleboxgames.com. I've already talked about my Shelf of Opportunity a bit, but I wanted to spend a little time on it because there was some confusion in my own head about how many games were left on the shelf. Right now I have 39 unplayed games. I started the month with 37. The thing is, I played a bunch of games that I had before, and I've already talked about those a little bit, but I also added a bunch of games. These are all games that showed up in Kickstarter, from Kickstarters for the most part, but it's also one game I bought at a store and one game I bought online. So this month I got One More Thing, a game about a sort of Columbo-themed storytelling game. I got SOS Titanic, Pendulum, and then the Jason Tegmeyer Button Shy Games recent Kickstarter delivered. So I got Sprawlopolis, The Skulls of Sedlec, and Tussie Mussy. All three of those came in as well, which bumped up my unplayed games quite a bit. And many of those came with expansions as well, so my expansion list has ballooned. But Brendan, you were saying to yourself, didn't you say your collection size stayed the same? Well, that's because I've made a pile of games that are for sale, so I don't count them as being in my collection anymore. I'm selling them. And these are, ladies and gentlemen, Hyperborea, Star Trek The Next Generation, the deck building game, Sea of Clouds, Rent a Hero, Robinson Crusoe, and Kingsport Festival. I'm also thinking I'm going to add My Village to that. We played that again in July and we enjoyed it, but honestly I think if I sell it, none of my family will notice, which is maybe a good metric as well. So the final thing for our top of the stack here is to talk about what games I plan to play next month. I've picked out 4 using the usual categories. First, a brand new game that I'm interested in playing is going to be Merchant of Venus. The big challenge of this one, of course, is that it takes a long time to play, and so getting it played will be hard. My revisit is Nexus Ops. This is a tight little area control game from Fantasy Flight. I remember playing it and enjoying it quite a bit. I've heard it described as a knife fight in a phone booth because it is very tight and vicious. But I really enjoyed it the one time I played it with my daughter. She doesn't even remember playing it, so it wasn't that memorable for her. It is out of print now, I believe, so maybe it'll sell for something worthwhile. I don't know. The audience choice, because I played Jaws, that leaves 2 games at the top of the audience choice list. We've got Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the board game, which I tried and failed to play in both June and July, and Teach You. So I'm back to trying to play Teach You. I don't know how I'm going to get this played with my family because it's so bridge-like. So what I might do is go on Board Game Arena, or one of those websites has Teach You as a game. And I may see if I can find a group of strangers willing to play Teach You with me. That will be interesting. And then for my revisit, my reattempt, this is a game that's previously been on my top of my stack that I'm going to try to get played again. This is Res Publica 2932 AD or something like that. It's a Reiner Knizia set collection game that I really want to get played this month. I may just force my friends on Saturday to play that. So that is my top of the stack. You know what? I think I'm going to make my new game choice Pendulum instead of Merchant of Venus. That's a new game I added to the list. I'm pretty sure I'm going to play it, but I'm kind of making it hard on myself by putting Merchant of Venus there. I'm really excited about Pendulum, so I'm putting Pendulum on instead of Merchant of Venus. If you want to hear about Merchant of Venus, do hop over to our guild and follow the link to my top of the stack where you can vote it up, and then I will have to play it in a future month. In the meantime, that's going to be it for me today. I hope that you had a pleasant walk today, and I hope your next walk is as fun as mine was. Thanks for joining me. Bye-bye.
Brought to you by Rattlebox Games.